All right. All right, everyone. We want to welcome you to Slow Motion with Bishop Bowser. And today I have my guest with me, and this is Aeiramique Glass Blake, and we call her Meeka for short. And so today we want to just highlight Sister Meeka, and talk about the work that she's doing in the community. She's doing a lot of work, put her body on the line so many times, and going to jail, being arrested, going to court, all type of things. Some people got breaks, but they didn't give her one, right? She had to fight all the way just to get justice for herself, along with fighting for other people. And so with all the things that she's been doing, we want to highlight that, but also, she's running for office. So we want to make sure that we highlight that too, and people know about her running. She can tell us why she's running and what that's all about, and so that everybody can get an understanding of it. And so we want to thank you, Meeka, for being on Slow Motion with Bishop Bowser. Welcome to the show. How things going?
Good. Thank you, Bishop Bowser, for allowing me to be on this platform with you today. I love you, and you're always a huge support for years now.
Yeah,
we've been going strong with the work. And so I'm really honored to be on with you tonight and have a real conversation.
Right. And one of the things that, I kind of always knew, because, I've seen, before we got to know each other and have those conversations and things like that, I know, like, I always we talked, and so I always kind of knew, that, running for political office was one of your aspirations, because when we first started having conversation, that was one of the first things you were talking about. Back then it was city council, but then of course, council member stepped in that because I knew you was looking at that, and then you stepped back on that. Then I knew you were going to run for Congress. You were telling me, hey, I'm gonna run for Congress and so on. So I always knew, sometimes when people give it a run for office, they let people push them up there, or some folks do it for attention and things like that. But I know this was actually a inspiration or a passion that you've had. And since I first gotten to know you, you were always talking about that. I said, you want to do
Right.
what? yeah, I'm running for political office. That's my aspiration, and that's what I'm going to do. So so it's most definitely appreciative, and we understand that and know that. So, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself first, and some of the work that you're doing in the community. Who are you? I know who you are, but a lot of people probably think they know you, don't know, even myself.
Well, everybody knows me as Meeka, and I am born and raised in San Diego. I'm pretty much throughout the county of San Diego, but my home is Southeast San Diego. I was definitely raised in Southeast, and really I come from a very diverse family. So my background is like, there's not one area of San Diego that I haven't either lived in or spent a lot of time in. So I do, I'm one of those San Diego natives that claim, my whole county, and really love it here. I went to I tell people I'm a product of public school, charter school, and private school. I went to multiple private Christian schools. I had a really hard time in the education system. And so my mom would try out public schools. If that didn't work, I went to Nubia Leadership Academy, which is at Bayview. And it was an amazing charter school, particularly for Black kids. I don't want to date myself. I am 33, but I was part of the first class of Nubia. And then I ended up graduating from a private Christian school, high school called Grace Christian in Claremont. I went to Eastlake High. So I pretty much, I'm all throughout San Diego. And then one of the things I think that a lot of people may know, and I talk about a lot, is like my faith. And I have a grandfather who is a bishop as well, Bishop J.A. Blake. And then my other grandfather, God rest his soul, he was a deacon at Bayview Baptist Church for 50 plus years. And one of the things that people don't know, he served in the military. Then when he came out here, he retired from the post office. And then he was the realtor that bought up a lot of the lands for the different churches, and particularly Bayview. And so my mom was one of 10. And my dad he's still here. He's an architect and does military contracts. So my deep roots in San Diego and in the church, world are deep in the Kojic, side and the Baptist side. But I'm a juvenile justice, restorative justice consultant and counselor. And then I'm the director of an organization called Generation Justice, which is the youth-led activism, organizing, and advocacy organization. And I pretty much advise many of the public officials and, law enforcement, creating equitable policy, reimagining what public safety looks like, reimagining and reconstructing what school culture discipline looks like, and the implementation of restorative justice and restorative practices, right? So I do a lot of conflict resolution within departments, organizations, and school institutions, really trying to find and implement equity, accountability, and transparency in every policy that we're creating and making sure that things don't harm, but are actually helping. And what are we doing when we create policy? What is our structure to make sure that we're not harming, we're not creating policy that ultimately harms some and helps others. We need to make sure that it's helping everyone across the board. And so I guess like my messaging is that, we really need to be intentional about equity. We need to really be intentional about equality. We need to be intentional about just and righteous policies and laws. So that's pretty much what I do.
And amen. Now, before we move forward, I know folks are coming in. Those that are coming in to watch this, share this live feed, tag someone, invite somebody to come on in so that they can listen to this conversation. I was messing with Meeka, so I'm gonna message y'all. I know this, you're celebrating the pagan day, Valentine. I can't stop it, right? If I could stop it, I would try to stop everybody. But we know that this is kind of like somebody's holiday or what have you. But let's take the time out right now to invite folks in, and if you have a comment, you have a question for Meeka, for sure, ask that question, because we most definitely want to be engaging here. And so I'm watching from one perspective, we're doing a live interview, but I'm also watching comments. And so if you give a comment, we'll pause and most for sure ask Meeka in regards to that question and so on. So when did you start Generation Justice?
I started Generation Justice, oh my gosh, I think it was 2017. And actually, interesting story, I was working with you and others, other leaders over at SDOP.
Right.
And I came up with the concept with my sister of Generation Justice back when Alfred Alongo was killed.
Right.
And we were out there doing a lot of the conflict resolution piece, work. And from that, seeing how devastated my sister was, I really wanted to create a space for young people to advocate for the changes and the justice that they wanted to see.
Right.
And how Generation Justice really unfolded was Lincoln High School was having some issues.
Right.
And they called me in, like many folks do when some stuff is going down. And I ended up, I was dealing with somebody at the organization that I was working for, SDOP, who was not very supportive of me doing a lot of the things that I was doing. So I took off of work and I really started to, fight and advocate for these students, parents, and teachers at Lincoln High School.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, it was interesting because the rabbi of the superintendent, St. Martin, she threatened me with the rabbi because the rabbi was part of SDOP as well. And so from there, Generation Justice kind of came to life. This concept that we had already been thinking of came to life. And so for months, we were fighting for what the choice that the parents, students, and teachers have made at Lincoln High School. And we fought until we ultimately got what we were fighting for.
Amen. Amen. So, so now I know, like I mentioned at the beginning, I always knew that you had aspirations to run for political office, and, just a matter of finding finding that spot, that place for you where you fit in. And so I know that you're running for an office. Can you tell us what's going on as far as with what you're doing right now, as far as politically and being a candidate and all that? Tell us what you're doing.
Yeah. So I am running for California State Assembly, the 79th Assembly District that formerly Dr. Shirley Weber held that seat. She went on to, because Alex Padilla was put in Kamala's seat, Dr. Weber was then appointed by the governor to be in the Secretary of State seat, which now the seat for the 79th Assembly is vacant. So I'm currently running. There are 4 other people in the race. And I, like you said before, I went from thinking about city council. I knew that probably wasn't the right seat for me. And I'm very, me, I'm very strategic about how I move and being very intentional about making sure that it's where God wants me to go, but also, God gave me a certain set of skills and gifts. And I don't think that would be best utilized sitting on the school board or sitting here or sitting there. So I'm very strategic and intentional about how I move. I never foreseen the 79th becoming open, right? For multiple reasons that, I won't get into unless people ask me about it. But I didn't foresee it being open, and I really seen Congress. So I ran for Congress prior to getting sick. And I ran because I really wanted to have a seat that not only created policy, but was an oversight structure or government that was really about transparency, looking into things, being that oversight, and being that accountability and balance to other higher powers. And so Congress shares obviously power with the Senate and the president, right? So I felt like that was perfect for me. And assembly is very similar. So instead of it, assembly sharing like Congress power with the Senate and the president, the assembly shares power with the governor and the Senate. And I think, within the assembly seat, you have the ability to really create. A lot of people don't do this well. They either do one or the other. They either do policy really well, or they do programming, implementation, constituent services, case management really well, right? They do one or the other. And I, because of my background and experience in both, and that accountability and oversight piece of it, I felt like, wow, other than Congress, this would be an amazing seat for me. I thought I was just, after being sick and almost, losing my life, I really thought I was just going to be a diplomat and work on conflict resolution and work on policy, more from, because you always laugh and joke and you're like, Meeka, you're so diplomatic and you always look at everything. And I think people have seen me so much in the spotlight, fighting for justice, shutting stuff down, getting arrested. They don't really know all the work that I do behind the scenes that has to really work with the individuals that I openly fight with in the public eye. So it's,
right.
so it's interesting, position to be in and role that I've played in our community and in the political structure. I'm either everyone's best friend or I'm the most hated person there is. And it just depends on the day and the situation, right? But within assembly, I think, for me to really have the ability and the power to create policy that that also trickles down to our, and not, I don't even want to use the word trickle downs, but directly impacts people in our community, their everyday lives,
Right.
whether it be education, whether it be economic development, and whether it be employment, whatever that looks like. We are able to create programs and policy that are interconnected with each other. And if you can do both well, you can be amazing in that seat, and you hold so much power and resource, direct state, directed resources to your direct community that needs it the most. So it's the middle ground between your local policy structure and legislation and your federal national legislation. You're really advocating for California, your state as a whole. So I'm really excited to be reigning.
So, with outreach and the work that I do, gang violence, a lot of times we just say gun violence prevention or violence prevention and intervention. And with that work and working specifically with my focus is gangs in the streets and things like that, especially what's happening to Black men and so on. I think it's very important for those folks that, normally, they don't think in terms of how legislation impacts their life, right? Because, when you look at Proposition 21 that impacted, had that gang conspiracy piece in there that had a lot of folks getting locked up and so on. That was a proposition, but a lot of these things that happen up in the state legislature, right? When you talk about police accountability, when you talk about the gang the cow gangs, right? And when you talk about the database they have with that, when you talk about the prison system, which most of our people are impacted by, especially Black men are impacted by it, all that is impacted from the governor down to state legislators, whether it's Senate or in the assembly. And, one of the things is I know, like being a state representative for Assembly District 79, whoever get that district, if it's you or whoever, part of that job is, making sure that just laws are passed, but also to hold the government accountable, right? For the things that are happening, and whether it's the governor and his branch or them down, there should be a great accountability, and we need folks to do that. I know one of the things that really disturbed me with all the things that we're doing is that quite a few of our assembly people who was in office was getting money from the police union, right? They were actually they took donations, even. And so now I know why some of these bills are watered down, that they're really saying is great, but they're not that great. They were watered down. And I was told this about these bills, like AB 392, I think it is. I was told that the bill was watered down. I said, no, that's not what I was told. And this was the gentleman that did the research and everything. And then come to find out that it actually was, and these folks were taking money from unions and so on, And so how do you, what's going to be different about you from the perspective of that accountability, right? Holding them accountable, campaigning, because it's going to be tough for you, right? In campaigning and taking police union or police officer association money, whatever you want to, however you want to label that. How are you going to do those two things? Hold these legislators and the government branch and all of them accountable if you get into office, and how you're going to get there. Well, I should say first how you're going to get there, because are you going to take police union money and all those different type of things like a lot of these folks did? Even if you get in office, can you make a commitment not to take police union money like they took and nobody really cared and there's no accountability there? And how would you hold them accountable?
Right. And I'm talking to you like you don't know these things about me, and you're asking me questions like you don't know. So, which is great because there's a whole audience of folks that don't know my record and don't know my history, right? I think for me, I'm not going to do much that is different than what I've already been doing, and I've been one of the leading people that have been holding the police unions accountable. I am not a liked person in the union. And so the odds, I would say, are against me because there's not many people who have ambition and have the desire to be in office who won't compromise and do whatever it takes to get there and stay there, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, and because of my faith, right, I don't operate out of what Aeiramique wants to do. If God told me to go this path and direction, mm-hmm. The only way I'm going to make it there is by staying true to what I'm supposed to be doing and what he's called me to do. Right. And so on a policy or political level, no, I'm very much committed to not taking police money. It's never going to happen from me. Right. And when I say this, I'm very transparent about my work with law enforcement, my work with the police. Like I've always been open about that. And because I'm so connected with the streets, there's other folks that I gotta, talk to and gonna look at me crazy if I'm doing certain things. And so I've always kept that open line of communication to say, hey, this is what I do. This is where I am willing to work with them. This is where I do come together with them. But this is where I will always hold them accountable and always come up against them if they are trying to implement something that is unfair, that is not just, that is criminalizing whole communities, that is locking our Black and brown folks up, but beyond just Black and brown. I always talk about how this country uses people up. So our veterans and other folks, it uses people up and then throws them away, right? And if they now are dealing with mental health, whatever the case may be, our unsheltered population, then they end up being criminalized because there's policies to keep them, basically to keep our city and our state looking, my grandma calls it nice, nasty, looking a certain type of way, giving the illusion of something, but not really what they're trying to, paint California and San Diego out to be. So I think, for me, there was reasons why I didn't support certain people, whether it be for mayor, other things, because they took police union money. Mm-hmm. And I'm very adamant about not taking, police money. I'm very adamant, special interest as a whole, right? So to answer your question, that makes it very difficult when you are an independent mind and you are constantly having to hold folks in the establishment accountable, hold folks in these unions accountable. And then also you're in this space of fighting for your community, but at the same time, trying to better your community and understanding that even accountability within your own community is attached to restoration, right? And so I think that is why I really want to be in a position to show people what it actually looks like to not compromise, to hold folks accountable, but to still be able to get things done. And I think people are so used to being tied to their political parties and establishments and their cliques and the popular group that no one is really, everybody's so divisive, no one's really getting anything done. And then you want to basically, yes, and I will say this about like the watered down policies. And I said this with some other folks on a local level who had to do some stuff that we didn't understand. Sometimes in politics and policy, you might have to make the first step in the right direction and not get all you want, but take what you can get at that point, because you don't have enough of those votes. And until you can get there, you need to take what you can get. That is where I would potentially move if that was the case. But as far as me not doing the right thing based on the favors I owe because people helped give me elected, or the money that was attached to my campaign, and so now I can't put forth policy against these folks, that's never going to happen for me, and that defeats the purpose of being in the seat in the first place, because we're trying to change some things around.
And let me just say this, because with me, people think I'm extreme. So when I say things, people just dismiss, oh, that's just Bowser, that's him. Ain't nobody listening to him.
Yeah.
But I have observation. I see a lot of things, and especially in politics. Mm-hmm. And what you just said with compromise, there has to be compromise, and I clearly understand that. But the problem that I have is that, like, when you look at people like Assemblymember Lorena Gonzalez Fletcher, a former Assembly, now Secretary of State, Dr. Shirley Weber, they took money from the union, right? And the community gave them a pass on it. And that kind of, when I went back and looked and saw how there was a compromise on AB 392 and it's watered down and so on, even though you got something, but you didn't get what we originally supposed to get, and then you start thinking like, well, why was there a compromise, right? Was there a compromise because of lack of good integrity, and a person that's really like compromised because they want to get the best for the community, or was it a compromise because we're paying you, you better do that, or you won't get that support from us anymore. And
right.
Some politicians are straight up quiet. The other issue that I have with politicians is, they pass laws sometimes that they think are helping the community, but it's hurting the community, right? And, how are we going to get our communities, involved in this political process to understand what's going on? Because when you're in office, you're going to need that support, and of course, I've been up to Sacramento many times lobbying different kind of, you see all these folks up there, different groups lobbying for different things and so on, and sometimes you come together on that. But and you have different groups in San Diego that's up there. But the people who are impacted the most and closest to the pain, they don't seem to be an interest in them. So how will you, do you have any plan, or are you, like, if you get in office tomorrow or April, what is April 4th? April something.
April 6th.
April 6th, yeah. When they have election, you get elected. How will you be able to? Will you start communicating with the community, get those people who really should be at the table and really understand, that politics play a major role in how our community is impacted and underserved and oppressed and over policed and all these different things, right? That intertwine and work together. How will you do that versus, so what some of these other politicians they just continue to really harm the community? We think they're helping the community. They might pass one law to help the community, but they pass another law to take the community three steps backwards. Yeah.
There's a few things that you said that I want to kind of tap into.
Okay.
You said, will you, get the community and make sure that people are at the table and have a seat at the table. And for me, I think that's the issue. We have too many politicians and not enough public servants. And for me, the way in which I lead is not, I'm, me, I move very fast, like boom, 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 boom. But one of the things and one of the reasons why I've been able to achieve most of what I've been able to achieve was because of coalitions that were built within the communities that I serve. I was not operating, solely just Aeiramique. It was always people like yourself and a whole host of others who are there to put our minds and our experiences and all of that together to create something that works for not just us, but everyone who we say we are serving. And I think that's the difference, is that a lot of times, and I that's how we get our community engaged, right? They need to see representation that not only looks like them, but representation that they actually have fought alongside, representation that they are confident in. Like, I know that you don't put all of your confidence in anybody except for the Lord, right? I know that about you, Bishop. But there's some stuff that people can say about me to you, and you're gonna be like, nah, I'm gonna check this out with, because you've seen when the cameras are around what I'm about. And the same thing vice versa with you. There's some stuff people can't bring me because I'm like, not Bishop. And if so, I'm gonna talk to him. Exactly. And I think a lot of times there's a disconnect on who's representing us and who's actually in these positions. And a lot of times they are not directly connected to the community. So how can you really, truly, comprehensively look at policy in a way of, who is this going to help? Who is this going to harm? And how do I make this in a way, implement this in a way that it does not harm anyone? How do I make these minor changes in policy, or not water this down, but maybe change this over here to make sure that, hey, I'm not just looking out for the Black folks, or I'm not just looking out for the Latino folks, or I'm not just looking out for, the X, Y, and Z. I'm looking out for everyone. Right. And that is not how policy is really thought of. And I think once people start to see transparency, once people start to see actual fairness, once people start to see an actual fighter, and when I say fighter, like fighting also means like strength, but also strategically in a mindset of like, I'm going to come to you if we're working on a policy and I know that I can't get this policy passed without X, Y, and Z. I need to be transparent with my community and those who have been working on me with this, so they can get it out to the broader community on why I'm moving this certain type of way. Now, police union money, there's just certain things it just stay over there, right? But if you see me working with the police or working with law enforcement, you're going to easily say, that's always been Meeka. Yeah.
So not to interrupt you, kind of do what you complete your thought, but the thought just came to my mind. I want to ask you, as far as running for office right now, you have a lot of labor unions that's out there, that most time push towards Democrat. Are any of them supporting you or endorsing you or anything like that?
No. Let's put it like this, Bishop. You know who my endorsements are going to be from? Community members, community organizations, the community throughout the 79th. It's not going to be labor unions, because I'm looking, even though labor members are very much connected to their communities and move a certain type of way, they're not always the ones making the actual decisions. It's the labor leaders. Right. And those are all backdoor deals with their minds already made up, right? So you have, and I hear Leticia is an amazing advocate for.
Oh, she's running for office.
She's running for the same seat. She's an amazing advocate. I don't know her, I've met her yet, but
are they all endorsing her?
Labor pretty much is. It's either going to go to Akilah or her. Labor is split right now because Leticia has done some amazing things within labor as a lawyer. And then you have the Democratic Party, who already made up their mind because they want to support Dr. Weber's daughter, and based off of who Dr. Weber is and the power she has. And so it leaves people like me, who many of these both entities have used me when they could, right? And when I say use me, like, I don't do anything that I don't want to do, right? But at the same time, I always say you will use our voice and our resources and our connection with our communities to get what you want. And then once you got it, the support goes away, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what's really happening right now, is that people are afraid of the two power structures. So they're either going to go with this power structure or this power structure. And then a person independent like me, people are always like, well, who is your loyalty to, Labor or the Democratic Party? And I'm like, my loyalty is to righteousness, equity, what is fair. And, you know, depending on the day and the situation, I will evaluate everything in the right context and make my decision based on that. And anytime a person is independent running for office, and I'm running as a Democrat, but I'm an independent, you know, everybody knows. And so anytime a person who is independent, not tied down to any establishment or special interest, they have it harder, because both entities, all these entities know, hey, we can't buy her off. You know, we can't buy her vote. We can't buy her policies. We can't, you know, we can't negotiate in regards to deals, backdoor deals. Everything has to be a certain type of way with her. We know how we're going to have to move. We don't want her. This is going to be too difficult. We don't know which way she's going to go on any given thing. And it was the same thing. Like, I had to, and I'll just tell you this, Bishop, so you can kind of get a different idea. Soon I'll be making an announcement. Like, it went out last week that we won the ADEM slate. I ended up, I don't know how I won. And let me say why. Because in the beginning, I was on a slate with some of the people that were now running for the 79th. So we were the 79th ADEM slate. It's 7 women and 7 men. And they are the ones within the Democratic Party that represent the community and make votes and do endorsements within the party, right? And so I really seen how harmful the Democratic Party could be, and these ADEMs could be, when there are a minority of, you know, folks, a little bit of folks making huge decisions on who's going to be the face of the Democratic Party and be the candidate that runs in these different seats. And before the community ever gets to hear who all of these individuals are and what they are about, the party already makes a decision and basically pushes anyone who they don't want and they don't choose out the way. And so I decided to really get involved in the party in a way I had not before, because I don't think there should be a 2-party system in the first place. But since there is, I'm going to dismantle things from the inside out. Well, I was told if I ran for the 79th seat, it did not matter, even though these folks were my friends and I have fought alongside them or even fought for them, that it did not matter because they were going to endorse whoever Dr. Weber wanted to endorse. And so there was no like, who's all running? Let's evaluate this. It was really like, yes, Meeka, you've done all this work, but because of the last name, we have a higher chance of winning the seat. So we're going to put all our energy behind this particular person. And not only are we going to do that, but whatever Dr. Weber says, this is what we're going to do. And this is how it is with a lot of the other assembly seats, is that whatever that position of power, that person in power says that's representing that seat, those ADEM slates normally go the direction that public official goes, right? And so so for me, I was like, I'm off. Get me out. Like, get me out. This is not how I roll. I have the ability to think and operate for myself and in the best interest of my community. And I got off the slate, and I asked another young lady who was on another slate for that same district, hey, if you want to be on both so you can win. And so I started pushing for her completely, and a few other folks, and completely like leaving myself out of it because I wanted no part. And I still ended up winning because, you know, that's how God works. But it was just a reality of like, I'm willing to remove myself out of things and fight a different type of way. Right. Because if you're telling me straight out, hey, we're operating this way and I know this way is wrong, I'm not, I'm not with it. And I'm always going to fight against it, even if it's people that I love and care about. And I have to do what I have to do and what I believe and stand on. So
And I appreciate that. I know that. I know you came at me too, and hold me accountable and tell me like it is and stuff, and I anybody that respect me, they can hold me accountable,
Yeah.
I
Same.
don't know if Miss Francine Maxwell is on, but she was on. She's another one, a Black woman that will hold you accountable, right? But she respect you, right? She respects
Yeah.
everybody. But when you're wrong, or if she at least you think you're wrong, see it wrong, or what have you, she's gonna come at you. She's gonna. It's about accountability, right?
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
all supposed to have that and submit to that, right? Subject ourselves to that because we want to be held accountable and things. So there's nothing wrong with that. I'm, for open disclosure, I'm nonpartisan. I'm not Republican or Democrat. Or
Right.
I've been Democrat for a long time, but I just don't like their platform. A lot of things that they do and so on. I've been part of the union, been a union representative. I come from the rank and file. I climbed, was a steward, became chief steward, became the vice president of our local, and then the president of our local, and the vice president of the state council of the union. I've seen all the politics, all the workings in it. And it's basically like you say, the union bosses, the ones at the top, they're the ones that's running everything. And I'm for unions when the rank and file, when the grassroots members are there running it, making the votes and making the decisions. But most time they're manipulated and they really don't know, and they tricked into a lot of stuff. And so a lot of
Right.
decisions are made at the top where the money is coming from. And really, that's what it's all about. They're like a corporation. It's about money for them and getting that membership money and using it for what they want to use for their political gain. Fighting for, there's some things I do appreciate. They will let you know who votes, who's really for the working family, and things like that. But a lot of things that they push are racist. They're racist. The institution, I should say, is racist. Maybe some of the people in it are not, but the institution is racist. And so that's why I have a real issue. And I come from inside of being a part of the union, from being a rank and file to being a staff person. So I've seen it, and so you have people who work for these racist institutions and claim that they're fighting for justice, but I don't know how you can do that and you're working for a racist institution and so on. Maybe you're trying to change it from the inside out, and great, just like you're running for the office, you say you're trying to change it from the inside out. So I wanted to ask you a question in regards, because I had an interesting conversation with someone the other day. I was on this wasn't really like a panel, it was like an interview panel of a gentleman that was interviewing us because he's doing, I think, a thesis or something. And there was another gentleman that was on there. And hey Kelly, good to see you. And I think Francine, Miss Maxwell, evening, but wonderful comes. Thank you, Miss Maxwell. Thank you, Sister Kelly Harvey. They're on and they say hi. Meeka probably can't see you, so
And I can't.
they're on. They on. So we appreciate you all being on it and having this conversation and so on, joining the conversation, I should say, with us. But one of the things that this gentleman brought up, because my issue has always been with police stops, right, is we got to end these pretext stops. And basically, for those that don't understand what a pretext stop is, a pretext stop under the Wren, it was Wren versus I forget, was it Ohio? It was one of those states where the Supreme Court made a ruling that the police, like this gentleman, I think they was coming from a drug house or something, but police stopped them. But they didn't. But what they stopped them for, that wasn't the original reason why they were stopping. They stopped and said, "Hey, you were speeding, or your tail light was out, whatever it was." They used that as a pretext to stop you, to say, because it's against the law for police just to stop you, right? They can't just pull you over and stop you. They don't supposed to. They're supposed to have a cause to stop you. So what they do is they say, "Oh, there was a traffic violation, so that's why I stopped you." And then when they stop you, that's not really why they stop you. They stop you because they want to investigate, because they see a Black person driving and they want to stop you. Oh, yeah, he looked like a gang member. So then they start asking questions. You got tattoos, you're part of a gang. Can I search your car? You got any drugs in your car? You got any guns in the car? All these different things, and then after searching all that. And so one of the things that I've been pushing is we got to end these stops, right? End these pretext stops, which is basically racial profiling. And, when you look at in the county of San Diego, 9 out of 10 stops are initiated by the police, right? And so on the other end of that, a lot of folks are pushing for non-police officers to respond to those 911 calls, where it's called for services, right? Where people might be under mental distress or something like that. And I totally agree with that. But one thing I was doing a little pushback on that, because what the real issue is the those police officers initiating those stops. But a gentleman brought up an interesting point to me the other day, which kind of shifted my thinking a little bit. Not so much shift my thinking about pretext stops, but also supporting the other side of it too. And I think we got to have this balance. Is that he said like 9 out of the 10 911 calls that people call for service, you know, of the police officer, when there's a shooting or when somebody get injured, when a Black person gets shot or injured, somebody get injured, 9 out of 10 times when that person is shot, it is due to a 911 call. And so on the one end, with the pretext stops that lead to mass incarceration, the way they treat our community, older police, our community, stop them looking for petty stuff like drugs and things like that. Then on the other end, they're killing us, right? And so we got to have that equal balance. And I see, from what I'm seeing, is and I know, you know, once you get in office, if you know, if you be the one that the people choose, you got to gather your staff and your experts and all these different folks together, do research and put together something. But I'm really interested to know what your thoughts are on balancing this out, right? When we're talking about how the police is police in our community versus having non-police officers on this end to respond to these various calls, right? That may not be need a police officer for, right? Like the work we do with violence intervention, there's things that we can do. Other people with mental health services, there's things that they can do. They can just call us, right? You don't even have to call the police on some instances. And the same thing with the where the stops the police are initiating. We got to stop that. They shouldn't stop a person unless they have probable cause. Shouldn't ask to search. They should only search when there's probable cause. They shouldn't be stopping somebody just because they're on probation or parole. They have to have probable cause, right? And even to search the car, probable cause. And so, what are your thoughts on far as I think we need to get something statewide, because the county don't have power over the sheriffs. They can pass whatever they want. We're trying to work with something with the city as far as with the pretext stop, but we got a mayor that took union money and he's fighting against us on that, right? I hope he changes his mind. Maybe he got something to work. I don't know. But as it seems right now, he's not going to budge on that piece, right? So I think we need to get something done on a statewide level. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I 100% agree. I think a lot of, you know, our work has been around, you know, and you can relate to this, Bishop, like we're in a very interesting position because on one end, we're advocating to make sure that our communities are not being criminalized and over policed, right? And seeing that this country as a whole, but even if we bring it all the way just down to locally, San Diego County invest a lot of money in policing. Right. And so when people are saying defund, you know, I use the word reallocation. It all means the same thing. You just the effect that you want to bring in it. And I'm huge. I come from a mental health background. I was a mental health counselor for a long period of time. So a lot of these calls I feel like should be handled by mental health professionals that are willing to put themselves, you know, out there and intervene. But at the same time, you know, we have to make sure, you know, I hear La Jolla and other folks say, oh, we don't have enough policing. They don't come fast enough. And we're like, oh, please take some of ours, like, go ahead. And so for me, how I look at this is that I want to be able, anytime I take a case, and this is just me, I always ask people, what does justice look like for you? You know that. Yeah, I always ask, what does justice look like for you? Because what it looks like for me and you, Bishop, might look different for what it looks like, you know, for somebody else. And just to give like some context to that is like the reason why I ask that is because there are communities that don't want the police, but know that if they have the money and resources to put OGs out there and pay them and pay these kids to stop shooting each other and get them into productive, not these rinky-dink programs that, you know, are just for the, you know, the kids that, you know, you're going to get good outcomes from, right? But I'm talking about the hardcore ones, hard to reach ones. If we were to create a pathway like I've done before, of making sure that they get money and funding and they're doing actual productive things and getting skills.
Right.
We see a reduction in violence, in community violence. We see a reduction in community violence when people that are like you, who can actually relate, and I actually know that you care about me, you're not just out here harassing me, you're the one out there and you have the resources and you should not be doing this work for free. Like, you're the one out there, and many other people and men like you are back out in our community. Those things are going to be beneficial. But I have to also recognize that there are other communities who want, when I hear white folks and white kids talk about police and they want police, I don't want to take that away from them. You go over there. But I do want to make sure that when our Black kids are going into other communities, that they are not being harassed and mistreated just because your community wanted more policing. So for me, in my mindset, I'm very strong about, when I was working on justice for Breonna Bell, who was slammed to the ground at Helix High School, I asked Bree, I said, what does justice look like for you? She didn't want the officer to get fired. And that blew my mind, because I was ready. And other people are like, this needs to. She didn't want the officer to get fired. But what she did want, she said, I don't want any more police on school campuses unless there is an extreme event.
And that's changing policy. So I have a question for you, Meeka, from a comment. The ball game. This is what he said, and I know you have faced this, so maybe you can address this. He said, "Hey, Bishop, let the community know, and you too, Meeka." He didn't say you, but I'm saying you too. He said, "Let the community know that we need to pick and support a candidate for the seat and avoid splitting the Black vote, because there are entities that are promoting and financing that campaign." How old is this sister you are interviewing? Blessings. So if you want to address that, maybe start with the age, because that was a specific question he asked about you, but also splitting the vote, because I know I've heard that before.
Right. Okay. Can you just ask the question one more time, Bishop? Sorry, I just want to make sure.
Yeah. So the ball game, what he said is that we need to pick a candidate. We need to pick and support a candidate for the seat and avoid us splitting the Black vote. That's the first thing, right? Because he said, because there are entities that are promoting and financing that campaign. I don't know what campaign, if it's yours or whoever. And how old is this sister you are interviewing?
How old am I?
Yeah.
I am 33 years old. And
what about splitting the Black vote? And because what this question is, and I hear this all the time in the community, is that we're splitting the Black vote. Hey, we're splitting the Black vote, and I know you dealt with that, and I know probably whoever else is running probably dealt Blacks that are running. I think what's her name, Akila, probably dealing with that too. I don't know if any other Black person is running for this position, but they're probably saying you're splitting the Black vote. And what is your response to that?
So I think we need to be realistic about the Black vote. We as Black folks definitely make a difference, right? We are the ones that carry us to where we're trying to go. But in reality, we are less than 10% in. We might be right at 10% within the 79th district. We are less than 6% within the whole San Diego County. Right. And so the reality of that is that we have to have somebody who has the ability to build coalitions. And the only way you're able to really truly build coalitions and stay true to who you say you are is by being connected in the community. And way before, like Bishop knows, he said it, I've always talked about running for office. But even when office wasn't an option for me, and even when, a lot of people know me from being on the news all the time, even when the cameras aren't around, I'm still doing the work, and I don't get paid for half of this stuff. Pretty much all of the stuff that I do. And me and Bishop have had these conversations as well.
Let me ask you a specific question. Question. Is anyone funding your campaign just to run the split the vote so that a Latino somebody can get in?
No.
Okay.
But if you know of anybody who really wants a true advocate and an independent thinker and a person who actually has a track record of getting things done that wants to help fund the campaign, send them my way. But
Right.
no, no,
And tell
I
us when you
don't.
can do
And
that, because we do, those that do want to support, I know they'll financially give. And
yeah,
Alonzo
yeah,
Harvey, all right, welcome on. He said affordable jobs, probably making a comment when you was saying something about that. Said nothing
yeah,
stops a bullet like a job, and that's right. And
yeah.
I agree 100% with that. And Sister Kelly said, don't forget affordable housing. Anything you want to say about that, affordable housing?
So I think one of the biggest things that you're able to do when you are in the assembly seat, you're able to not just directly impact the 79th, but California as a whole. And there's a couple of things that I want to do around housing. Everybody knows, like, I was sleeping outside. I was so frustrated with the housing issue. I was sleeping outside with our unsheltered brothers and sisters, just to bring awareness and to really tick off the political structure. And like, one of the things, so I have a proposal that I've been trying to get done for the local level, and it looks like it will happen once I'm in office, but is a tiny home community for our unsheltered population, but also a tiny home community for our transitional youth. Miss Harvey is a person who takes in people. She's always done that. We've both come together and funded some things to make sure that especially young people had some resources and had a roof over their head and transition, right? And so we know there's a deep need. We have 14, 15-year-olds there, that don't have housing, that can't be connected to school, that don't have the family support system. So I want to make sure that our unsheltered young people are taken care of. But then beyond that, we have a huge percentage of our unsheltered brothers and sisters that are Black. And then another whole percentage that are veterans that have greatly contributed to this country, but have been left and thrown away. And so I want to be very specific about what we create on a state level in our state budget around housing because there's certain things that happen on a local level, right? But housing specifically for different populations dealing with different things, because homelessness and affordable housing are separate but very connected to each other. And so we want to look at how are we building, and this goes back to labor and our city council, who's getting these contracts, how much affordable housing is being contracted in, what does that actually look like, who's actually holding them accountable to make sure they're meeting the quota that is set. And so on a state level, we need to do a better job of really looking at how we are building, what communities are we building in, and are we just coming in and gentrifying, or are we making sure that people in these communities have access to the housing that is being built in their community, right? And so, but we also have to talk about the economic crisis that we are in because of COVID and what that looks like, and how are we going to erase these deep debts that people are in because they could not pay their rent, and all of these different things. So we have a lot to tackle within the budget of the state, but I have some ideas of what I want to do specifically in San Diego in the 79th district, but I also have some ideas of what I want to do within California, making sure that, San Diego has it bad with our young people being unsheltered, but LA has it, even worse, right? And so I really want to have a comprehensive approach on how we deal with affordable housing and our unsheltered population.
Yes, I know here in San Diego, they said, even though San Diego make up about 5-6% the Black population, about 23 or 27% are homeless, the homeless that they deal
Exactly.
with. Alonzo Harvey said, "Can end violence with systems continue to criminalize and demoralize the community." Absolutely, 100% agree with you. And that's part of the problem. It actually starts violence. Exactly. And that's the problem, right? A lot of times they say, "Oh, we get 10 guns off the street," but man, y'all causing the problem.
Right.
Especially when you're over policed and underprotected. So
Right.
people want to feel protected, and they got to do what they got to do to feel protected. They ain't out there to harm people or kill somebody or things like that, but they do want to feel safe and protected, and they don't feel like the police is there to protect them, or
Right.
the politicians and the system, right? Because all they're
Right.
doing is underserving, marginalizing, making more laws, like we were talking earlier, that highly impact our communities and hurt us. Even when we try to have these grassroots foundations and organizations started to empower the community, they set up laws even to hurt those organizations where they can't even get started and get going to help bring resources in community. It's systematic
Because
and it's racist.
well, and it's because it doesn't look like the cookie cutter program that they can advertise and tokenize, right? And so these harder core programs that we're talking about are unconventional, but they work, and we know that they work, and many of us have used our own resources and abilities to implement these things. But imagine what they could do if they were publicly funded and implemented in a way that was very strategic, and it's not just pockets of us trying to help everybody. It's really a full-blown program. And that's the thing I want people, I'm grateful for all the programs that keep these kids busy and have all of these great things going, but I'm the person that is not about the cookie cutter stuff.
Right.
I want to get down to the real roots of these things, because that's when we're able to change the fruits that we're actually bearing. And when we have the Alonzos out there, when we have, the genuine people that actually have a heart and want to, they see, like, people always ask me, like, you're constantly defending, the streets and da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, no, you better believe I'm holding folks accountable in my community, right? Like, my kids that be running the streets, like, I'm holding them accountable at the same time. And me and you have had this conversation, Bishop, but at the same time, I'm going to protect them with all I have, because I understand the disadvantage. Like, and Dr. King talks about it. Like, you can't expect people, you say, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, but you never had boots to begin with. And we have to understand that historically, we have had so many inequities. And even when we worked our tails off and we had, our economy was doing well. I just wrote a whole article about reparations. And I talked about, even when we were succeeding, we had people that came and destroyed whole communities, right? And so we have to have real conversations about, like, yes, I'm holding my community accountable. I'm holding these folks accountable, but I also have to give them another option. I also have to make sure that you don't have your knee on their neck every time they're trying to change their life and get it together and make some changes. We need to make sure, like, stop, we have a criminal justice system that releases folks without any resources, without any money. And now you have a record where most people can't get a job if they have a record. Right. So, all of these things are so interconnected, and we can't keep saying, oh, you need to do better, but we're not willing to give you the resources and help you and give you that helping hand to do better, right? And so that's where I think we need people who can create policy that directly impacts their communities, with not just programming, but transformation, transforming these systems altogether.
Okay. And the ball game said she's the same age as my daughter. Then he also said this is a good point. They are financing the Latino candidate, right? So that's a good point, because that's try to divide, and then also trying to use the money and so forth to get the candidate that they want to get in. Black folks, who always got to fight for everything, no matter what coalitions we say we have, black and brown and all that. When it comes down to it, folks, the other groups, race groups, gonna look out for theirs, but Blacks, we gotta learn how to look out for ours.
So can I say this real quick,
Yeah,
Bishop? And Meeka will be the bad guy again today. It's okay. So we need to have a real conversation with our community. Because the labor is funding the Latina in the race. Okay. But the Democratic Party and the power structure is funding the other Black women in the race, right? So you have two special interest entities that are and individual candidates that are being funded on both ends in this particular situation. Right now, I'm in the crossfire because you know I work closely with the Latino community as I go hard. And I'm in the crossfire of Latino community saying we are more of the population, so we should get all of the seats. And that's why I said we need to have a conversation about equity versus representation. And in the context of this race, what does this actually look like, right? We lost Kamala's seat to Alex Padilla, and that's why Dr. Weber was put as Secretary of State. And so we lost the Port Commission, all of these things. And between the Latino community and the LGBTQ plus community, the Black community keeps getting the short end of the stick. But beyond that, we have to stop being so desperate to win and then put what we think or put who we think has a higher probability of winning, but not the right fit for the seat. And that's why we keep coming up short, because there is no good to have equity and the seat still remain empty because there's no substance in the seat, right? And I'm not talking about anybody in particular. Like I'm not even talking about.
No, I understand that. I understand that, because we got a Black person in the U.S. Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas, but he most definitely there's no equity, not representing us.
Right. What good is it that we have somebody and then they're not going to advocate for the very things that we're talking about right now?
Right, exactly.
And then how do we? People are having a conversation right now who many of folks know my work and know what I've done and
well, let me stop you right there right quick. Let me just stop you because Ms. Francine Maxwell said, Meeka, please share. You have been grinding before 2018. Thanks more than qualified.
Right.
Thanks. You're more than qualified.
Yeah. And that's all I was going to go into what.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to interject and put that in there.
Yeah, like I started off at in mental health, and then I moved into juvenile justice, and I started to see the inequities in the ways in which our young people were being criminalized, in the ways in which our folks dealing with mental health weren't receiving the actual resources that were available, but because the top and things were white-led, things were not getting down to our actual communities and getting the resources we needed. There's not one part of this district that you can ask me about that I haven't fought alongside different people, leaders like yourself, or been the person leading on these issues, right? And this is from education to economic development, housing, homelessness, to equity, in our educational system, to criminal justice reform and public safety. Most people know me for my public safety and criminal justice work, but that's the reality of the thing. Is like and you asked me this in the beginning, how do we get community buy-in? We get someone who actually represents them. And I'm not just talking about color of skin. Right. I'm talking about, diversity in thought. I'm talking about the way in which we strategically look at policy and not try to hurry up and get something passed so we can create a legacy for our own name, but something that is actual sustainable in our communities, right? So like, I'm not new to, like, I've been at this for a long time. And that's what's frustrating, is that we get so hungry to say, oh, we're going against the Latinos, or, oh, we're going against this community, or and we're not thinking about who are we putting at the forefront to represent us, and what have they done? Right. And what makes them qualified other than a degree, because we know many folks with degrees, you know how I feel, Bishop, I can go on and on, don't really have the experience and the ability because they are not connected to those closest to the pain, like we talked about before. So you're thinking book smart on, oh, 2 + 2 = 4, connect the dots, all of that. And I'm thinking like, okay, if I pass this gun law, there's a whole host of young people. We haven't even worked on some of the pretext stops and some of the other things. So there's a whole host of young people and Black people, communities that are going to feel this law in a way that this community over in Del Mar and La Jolla never feel. Right. But over here, the numbers say that they're not only, having high rates of domestic violence, but high rates of suicide. Mm-hmm. But no one's even going to stop them to even take that gun away from them. Mm-hmm. So how do I create a policy that is implemented on an equitable and not equal level at this point? Because before we get to equality, we first have to go through equity, right? And justice, to make sure that those who are being affected by things worse and hit harder, get to a place where they can operate and deal with things. Right. Then we can talk about equality, right? And so that's why people are like, oh, I'm tired of hearing equity. Well, I can't even talk about I can't talk about unity, and I can't talk about equality, and I can't talk about all of these things until we go through justice and equity first.
Right. And yeah, because equity is the whole system of racism, the systemic racism, institutional racism, structural racism, all these the systems that are set up, it's designed since slavery, right? And coming out of that, right. It's designed to create inequity. It's designed to give advantage, right, to white folks and disadvantage to Black folks. And we see it. We see the disparity and the inequity in every aspect, whether you look at home ownership, whether you look at employment, whether you even education, right? Because when you talk about education, there are folks that have an equal, Black person, white person have an equal education from the same college, whether it's Harvard or whatever. But then when they go out and get a job, they pay way lower. And right. So whatever argument people try to make on that, there is a clear inequity. And that's why I'm always, it's not that I'm racist, in a reverse rate, whatever they try to say, when I'm pushing for Black people, but Black people are at the bottom. And until you lift up Black people, you can't lift up this nation. And that's part of the problem with that.
Before you say that question, Bishop, like I think about, how, and this story in the Bible where it's 100, and they asked 100 sheep, and they asked, what about the 99? And he's like, I gotta go get this one. And when you talk about the bottom, it's like, it's not that I don't care about the 99. It's that the one is in need right now. And that's the thing. And that's what's so interesting and for me painful, because when white communities, Jewish community, I don't care, even with the Black Police Officers Association and the Black police officers have needed us. We've been there, right? Yeah. And sometimes, sometimes these are the people that we've had to, come against us. But anytime people have needed us and they've been the one, we have left the 99 to go get the one and to protect the one. And so when people,
that's the principle.
Yeah. And that's how I try to get people to think. It's not that I'm saying Black people are more important. Black people haven't been treated with value. Black people are at the bottom of everything. And then I don't know why the Latino community keeps fighting with us, because they're right behind us, right? But they have more of, especially here in California and within San Diego, of people power, where when they really truly want to get something done, they can, because they have the population to do so. We have to create coalitions with them, white folks, and everybody else we could possibly get with, because we are such a low population. So imagine having to operate like that and never compromising what you believe and who you are, and working with all these different individuals and coalitions and groups. Right. But I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Meeka. Let me read, Curtis. I want to make sure to get to the comments of folks that are commenting. Brother Curtis Howard said, she makes a good point on resolving the gang activities. Lots of programs embrace gang members who have already transitioned from the life as a safety net to make the success rates of their programs higher. And sometimes they, like what Meeka was also saying, is that sometimes they grab youth who would never be impacted by that, right? And say it was success. They never, we have so many people, but you haven't really helped the ones that need the help. He says, nevertheless, gang activities will not subside unless you reach the more involved, right? The incentives would be a vehicle. Great observation, Meeka. And that's what we're trying to do. When people say the police, that's one of the things we're trying to do right now. And our council member, Monica Stepp, is trying to do in regards to diverting or reallocating some of those funds that us that's doing that work out there, we can reach out to those who are directly impacted and bring them on in. The ball game said, he's talking to a friend, I think Francine on that one. Lonzo Harvey said, we have to pass legislation in regards to homes for felons. Amen. Government housing is not awarded to those formerly incarcerated. Major problem. Any comments on that? I think that's powerful, because whenever we're talking about the formerly incarcerated, and that's what Curtis Howard, he does also with All of Us or None. And we know that when it comes to people who are formerly incarcerated, especially if they had a felony and so on, it's hard for them to rebuild their lives in every aspect. Every aspect. There's some benefits in some areas if you know the right people get connected, but for the most part, there's a lot of disadvantage. And it's designed that way. That's what Lonzo was talking about earlier when you talk about criminalizing community, and then you start, arresting people, putting them in jail. And now they some of the people, they're not sending to prison, but they said, we let you go right now. You plead to a felony. And so they plead to a felony. Right now they got this record, and now it's going to be even harder. But I don't want to keep talking. I want to give you space.
No, I mean, I agree 100%. And I think, Alonzo knows me pretty well. That's one of the things that I'll be leading on, because I'm all about balance. And this is something you said early on, Bishop, like that is, I feel like my symbol are like the balance scales, right? And I truly believe that if we are, now, if I give you everything that you need to succeed and you still just throw that back in my face and don't utilize it, then we have a problem. But what I've seen working with the formerly incarcerated population and in the juvenile justice field is that when they have someone in their corner that is holding them accountable, and they actually have services that actually work, and there's not these high level barriers in between them getting on their feet. Like you can't, and I say this about the unsheltered population as well. You cannot say, go get a job, and they have nowhere to lock. Every time they leave their corner, their tent, everything gets thrown away. Okay, you can give some of those little lockers and all of that. There's some programs that try to get them cleaned up, but I can't even think about certain things, and I don't even have a roof over my head, right? And so I feel like that's the same thing with our formerly incarcerated, especially those who have felonies, is that we're saying, hey, don't you come back here, do what you need to do, get it together, get your life together. And we give you absolutely nothing. And we not only give you nothing, but we put a stamp on your forehead that says felon. And then we say, go do something with this. And that's all you have for your resume. Like, that makes no sense to me, right?
They make the rules or the policies, and the things what Lonzo was saying is like, if I want to go and try to get housing, whether it's government, whatever, then they say, oh, you're a felon, so we don't give it to felons, right?
So many barriers. So many barriers. And that's the thing. These policies don't make sense.
Right.
They don't make, unless it is those who are profiting from it, and it's just like, it's just like, for me, the felony thing works the same way with credit in my brain. Like, yeah, we need to know who pays their bills and all that on time. And great, you do that, you should get some type of reward. Kudos to you, right? But why are we giving these high interest rates to people and them not being able to even pay their basic, rent, or all of these things, because their interest, or their car note, their interest is so high, right? Like, what sense does that make? If we really want them to pay their bills, we're going to make it to where it is, a bill that is payable. Right. But that's not how we think. We do everything backwards, and it's strategically built this way, right? And so it's beyond just getting a person like myself into office. Like, it takes, because I'm just one person voting, right? And then I can build a whole policy, create a whole policy, but then I got to convince all of these other corrupt people, or not even corrupt, but just easily bought or easily compromised folks to
political folks. It's just about politics. What's their next step, and how they're going to climb the ladder of politics and so on. Your sister Ellen, she said, "What about housing?" Affordability for college students and young couples trying to remain in San Diego? Because I know one of the things, I'm always checking the data and the demographics and things, and we know in the past 18 years or whatever it's been now, that there's been a decrease, or Black folks are moving out of not just the city center, but the county of San Diego, and folks say they're moving back south, moving to other places where there's more
Houston, Texas.
We're losing a lot of Black folks here.
Atlanta.
And I'm sure other folks leaving too, but especially Black people, it's decreases, not increase. So she said, what about that? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. I think, and I'm going to talk about a little bit about like climate change and the way that San Diego is going. And then locally, we have some issues, right? And federally, we have some new leadership. And so we'll see how that goes. But I think we need to create not only incentives for people to stay here. They're leaving for multiple reasons. They're leaving because they can't find jobs that pay them what they are worth, right? And now they have all of this education debt, and they want to have some kind of equity in housing and property and all of that, but they can't afford it. Especially when they're going to school. So I've been, when I ran for Congress, I talked about the first 4 years of education in trade school free, and I've been huge and big on that, and then really creating a sustainable way that the state of California, those who are from California, basically have access and the ability to stay here and go to school and get their education, and have housing, right? And so that transitional housing that I talked about for our unsheltered young people who are in transition or that were a part of the juvenile justice system, we've seen Mission Valley has it. There's some other contracts being built where you have multi-living spaces. So it's where people are going to, SDSU is building Qualcomm and a work live space and stadium. And so we're seeing all of these places where, and Seattle has a similar program where you are living, working, going to school in that same space, and it's all affordable, and it aligns with our climate change goals, right? And so those are the things that I want to really look at, the way and the direction that we are going, because right now, San Diego is trying to become a high-tech, place, and bring in places like where, Google and all these different places. And the places that have these high-tech places like the Bay Area is so expensive to live. So we want to make sure, as we're bringing in these high-paying, good-paying jobs and companies and corporations, that we're not driving our people out either. And I'm not just talking about our Black folks. I'm talking about just because really, you know, folks going to school and different folks in different populations are really starting to be on the same playing field because they cannot keep up with the cost of living in San Diego. So we want to create incentives, state funded incentives to keep people here, make sure that they're able to get their education, and make sure that they're able to get a dignified, you know, paying job when they choose to stay here, you know, in California and in San Diego specifically.
Right. And so Ellen Nash, Sister Ellen Nash also said she agreed with a comment that you made. And she said APAC San Diego will be hosting a forum before early voting. So stay tuned for that. I want to check that. Alonzo said, she did when she first went in there, he said, telling you from the streets in Southeast Rays. She made that clear.
I think people forget that. I'm like, no, I'm all day, but Lonzo knows. And I claim where I'm from, no matter where I'm at, you know. And I think that's a lot of people get into a certain position and forget the people who held them down, you know. And y'all know that will never happen with me. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be here without half of y'all. So yeah,
and I hear you. The ball game. I gotta say it faster. My comments.
Oh, okay. Faster. And I talk a lot, so.
Ms. Maxwell said Republican male in the race as well is interesting. He is Latino. Republican male is in there. Layla said, "I'm here." Stacey Butler is watching. Wendy Wheatcraft. Okay, they're watching. I was just trying to get to some of the comments faster. Wendy said, "Justice and equity first." The ball game. I'm not familiar with this young sister. I've been advocating for the community for over 25 years, and I like her passion, but who is behind her candidacy? Dr. Weber, who? I don't think Dr. Weber is. But
no, I'm independent. None of them. Yeah, I said this in the beginning. None of them are supporting me, and when you cannot control somebody, when the establishment, the Democratic Party cannot control me and I can't be bought, and I've proven that over and over again when I have been, you know, when people have tried, and labor cannot, you know, buy me. And I'm all for the labor members, but I don't rock with the leadership, because the leadership is who controls everything and not the actual members. And the members basically in many ways get dictated to. And I told a story, and I hope you can go back and watch, about some of the things that are happening within the Democratic Party. And people have ambition, people want to run for office, people want to do certain things. And so they are not going to go against the establishment to support me, even when I've done a lot for them, right? But I never did that to ultimately get their support when I ran. So I'm okay with the fact that I'm going to have to run this race with the community by my side and not these special interests. And I want it that way because I'm held accountable by the public, by the people that I serve. That's how I'm even running. I announced so much later because I had to call the Bishop Bowsers and the different folks that are supporting me and the different leaders. And I had to say, hey, what do you think about this? And made sure that this was a seat that people could actually see me in and feel like I would advocate for them and know that by the track record and the work that I've already done and put in. So for me, it's not, Meeka doesn't get to wake up and say, oh, I want to run for office, you know, and I come from a family and I don't even use certain things within my family because I want to run on my own merits and the things that I have done. And not just the things that I have done, but the ability to create coalitions with the community and what the community has done, right? And I want people to know when I get into this seat, you know, we're in this together because you are the ones that got me here. And that is the difference. So when you're looking for who's the big person that's going to endorse Meeka, understand that I don't care who called themselves my friend at one point. when it comes down to politics, people will use you up and throw you away when they have ambition and are choosing to allow their ambition to drive them than doing the right thing. Right. People don't like an independent mind. People don't like an independent thinker. People dang sure don't like somebody who's transparent and tells it like it is and holds all sides accountable, no matter what side you're on. And so when they can't identify who your loyalties are to, and that you're not willing to compromise, they're not rocking with you. And so it's going to be up to the community to make sure that they get the word out that I'm running, and that I'm the person that they know, and that's been rocking with them from the beginning. So yeah.
Margaret Morgan's, if I'm pronouncing her, forgive me if I pronounce your name wrong, said the punitive policies create vicious, wicked cycle that doesn't make sense, period. Layla said capitalism. That's right.
Capitalism. Yeah.
Let me see, move on down. I might miss some of your comments. If I do, forgive me. Margaret said, you're brilliant. We need you in office.
Thank you, Margaret. I love you.
Brother said Southeast. I don't know if Benjamin Kelso still, I should say Benjamin Kelso, welcome to the show if you're on. And I believe one last comment. I like what she is saying. What is her plan to bring all necessary resources to our community that will help our grassroots organizations help their constituents? You can comment on that, respond to that comment. I think that's one of the last ones that I see there. And also, okay. I have a comment for you, a question for you after this. Then we'll let you wrap it up with some closing words.
Yeah. So I think the question was, what do I plan on doing to help grassroots nonprofits bring resources to the community? Was that the question?
Yeah, yes. He says, what is your plan to bring all necessary resources to our communities that will help our grassroots organizations help their constituents, people that we're trying to serve, like myself, doing violence intervention prevention, trying to reach the high risk group? What type of resources will you bring? Like what council member Step is doing for us, or trying to do for the community, but working with several groups, which I'm one of the groups, and so on, try to get those resources so we can be a blessing to the community and help reach those we're really trying to reach.
I think so. Just so you all know, I am one of the people that advise many of these folks, and at some point advised Monica around what we could do, especially with the community violence and what that looked like, and some of the gaps, because I directly worked with the gang population and just different young people in the community as well, and worked at a lot of nonprofits. And you have two types of nonprofits. You have the nonprofits that are really, truly, authentically about the services and making sure that the services touch and impact their community and transform their communities. And then you have the nonprofits that suck up a lot of the money and resources and don't always do what they said they're going to do. And so my commitment is to really look at on a state level the budget, because it's a collective budget that we vote on. What are the direct resources that I can link organizations? And I'm gonna be transparent upfront. I'm only linking and connecting not the popular kids, but the ones actually doing the work and filling the holes, the deep gaps and holes that we have, and really have a comprehensive approach on how they are operating within our communities, understanding that there's so many barriers. Those are the organizations, because all the other organizations, they're getting money. The nonprofits, they're getting money. But I really want to work with those who definitely, aren't doing the cookie cutter work and getting their hands in the roots of these things and the fruits. And that's why I always talk about, we need to be able to deal with the roots and the fruits. So it's looking at the state budget, looking how we can directly get funding to these different organizations. What are the needs of our communities? How do we implement this in a way where we can measure these outcomes? And how I measure outcomes is, and Bishop, when you guys were heavily out on the streets. I can't remember. I haven't looked at the data in a while, but we had a huge reduction in violence. We had a huge reduction in community violence. So we know these things work. So, but not just that, programs that, you know, I have a amazing concept that I want to do around the tiny home community that looks similar to Habitat for Humanity. We have so many volunteers and so many folks that want to do something, but we need the land and the resources to be able to do it. And so those are the things I want, because I'm so used to looking at policy and connecting it directly to programs. That is how like my lens is going to be. I'm going to go in and I'm going to look at everything we have, everything that's worked, everything that hasn't worked, and then everything that we've done on a grassroots level, and actually make sure that those who have done the work and we've seen the results get the actual resources needed to get that done. And not just do that for San Diego, but look throughout California, the areas in which, in the communities that need these resources, that we can directly streamline it to. We have too many policies where people see the policy but never feel the policy.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So
yeah. And I think, when it comes to reducing violence, it's the whole community that helps with that. It's just not one organization, one group, but it's exactly from people like Stacey Butler, what they do. It's from what the Harveys are doing, what Miss Maxwell is doing, what we do, of course, you do. I think it's a combination of everybody coming together, doing their part, and even just having conversations can help reduce that, right? And so that's been the thing, is like, let's continue to have these nonviolent conversations everywhere, and however we do it, whatever way you want to move in this, do it. So we're all doing our part. And when that happens, it does reduce. And because when things go bad and it's way up, we'll find a specific somebody to blame. But when it's going good, each group want to take the credit. I think we all should take the credit. Everybody that's been doing this and doing their part and been diligently out there doing it should get the credit for that. The community should get the credit. We should praise the community, those that's involved in doing this, and so that we can keep it going, right? Instead of starting to split up and then
fighting over a crime over a crime. And that's really what I want to do. I want to not be that public official that puts different organizations against each other,
right?
Because everybody, and this is historically, as a Black community, and even with us, with our relationship with the Latino community, is that there is this notion that there's not enough room for all of us, and there's not enough resources for all of us. And I'm here to say, like, I look at budgets, I look at certain things, there's more than enough, but our priorities, people in leadership who we keep electing, their priorities have been in the wrong place. And they themselves have even been greedy or took backdoor deals. And so we need not to continue to put people who are going to put each other against each other and say, oh, there's not enough, so only one of y'all. And so why do we have so many 15 organizations doing 15 of the same thing? We need to take a comprehensive approach, right? But I want people to know that everyone is going to get their piece of the pie, because it is about how we really look at our budgets, how we really reallocate money, how we really prioritize what is important to us. And like I said, a comprehensive approach looks like what I do in Southeast might look different from what I do in Mission Valley, because the need is different, right? And also being able to articulate that and explain that to the community as a whole, so there's no confusion. And I promise, like, when there is equity and transparency and accountability, then that's where the unity and the equality comes in.
Right. So I'm actually my last question, but thank you, Sister Ellen Ash, for what you're saying about me. I really appreciate that. And all the community and so on, that we work together, come together, appreciate love each other, because that's what we got to do, no matter what lane we in, right? But here's my last question, and you kind of segue, because you kind of touched on it a little bit already, right? And you know, because like when you talk about black and brown, or you want to make it more broader and or more specific, and talk about the black and Latino community, or Latinx, whatever term. Some people want to be called Chicano, some want to call us Hispanic, some want to say Latinx, some say no, don't call us Latinx,
I'm
and all
sorry.
different terms. You know, same just like black, African American, black American, you know, whatever, you know, and
To my heart.
respectfully for every person that takes the
head.
you got to respect that, right? And so we want to respect that. But you know, with what you were talking about earlier, with the population of black folks that show up to vote, and also the male turnout to vote and things like that, we for sure got to get more black people to do those mail-in ballots, right? Because I saw some stat data on that in the county, and blacks were kind of lagging in that area. Maybe they went out to vote, but getting those mail-in ballots. But I think also the other thing is that you will need to cross over and try to win votes over from white folks, Asians, Pacific Islanders, Latin Americans, or Hispanics, whatever term you want to use on that. All these different groups. So what is your message to everyone, all these different races of folks, and maybe specifically to the Latin community, of your voice of what do you have to say to them in order to get their vote?
Well, I think, you know, and I made a comment yesterday, and I said, you know, a student asked me what was the hardest thing about running for office, and I said, you know, having to take credit and advertise the work that you have done. And so I say this in like the humblest way I can, but like, you know, those who are familiar with my work know that I have really, you know, the coalitions, Bishop, you know, that we have are a huge amount of Latino folks, a huge amount of white folks, a huge amount of different religions and different backgrounds and different thought processes. And I think one of the things that I want folks who aren't familiar with my work is to know that, and to know that I haven't just, yes, I go hard for the Black community, not just because I'm Black, but because we are at the bottom, right? And I go hard for our brown community, and not just because half of my family is Latino, because I truly, genuinely love people. And if I see you, we're at the bottom and you're right behind us, and you contribute so much to our communities, I'm going to fight for you as well. You know, and I think the thing about it is people think that you always have to agree. It's just the same thing with the LGBTQ plus community. You know, you and I both, you know, all they got to do is pick up the phone and we will be right there. Yes, we have our own personal beliefs because of where we stand in our Christianity, but I never allow that to impact or affect how I create policy or how I think about policy, and it being fair and equitable and equality, but also showing up for people. If you are being wronged, or if something is not being implemented properly towards you, I don't care who you are, I'm showing up for you, right? And that's just always been my track record. So I think for me, it is really just about being able to get the messaging out there and really utilizing folks who have been a part of these coalitions that have helped, you know, they have been a part of helping me build these coalitions, for them to go out and get the word out that I'm running, and that this is not, you know, yes, she's going to go hard for the Black folks because they need it, right? Because we need it, right? Yes, she's going to go hard for the Latino folks, but she's going to show up for everyone. Right. And not only is she going to show up, my loyalties is only to what is righteous. My loyalty is only to what is just. Right. And fair and equitable. And so when your loyalty is just to that, I don't have any special interest pulling my puppet. You know, I don't have any puppet strings. Right. I don't have anybody who I have to answer to other than my community. And my community is not just Black. My community is anyone who looks at me as a leader, I am responsible for, and I have to handle that with care. And I take that And you know me, like I take that with a great deal of responsibility, particularly young people. And I think, and I'm just going to say this, I think young people are really going to be what we need. And I think Black, I love my Black women and I'm a Black woman, all that, but I think Black men have really felt left out and not heard, and a lot of attacks coming from different ways, especially if you are a Black straight man, And so I think for me, I hold so much value in our men. I I know that I'm a very dominant woman, but I also believe in everyone playing a different position. And I call you, Bishop, I call a whole host of other Black men for their thought process, the Alonzo Harveys. Like, I don't claim to know everything and have everything figured out. Or even there's certain times when I have to call you because I'm mentoring a Black male and I need you guys because I'm not a man, And so there's so many different things in the political scheme of things where Black men have been left out. And I think although I am a woman, I am going to be that person that's really talking to the needs of Black men and not just telling them how we're going to do it and what we're going to do, but asking them to contribute to not only get me elected, but even to roll out this work and do the implementation piece of it as well. And so I think that's how we're going to win this. It's going to be what it's always done. Every battle I've ever had to fight, it was not just me fighting it, right? It was not just me fighting it. It was a whole coalition that looked like a rainbow with different thought processes, with so many different things, but we came together because we seen something that we needed to change and we changed it. And I have and let me say, we have a track record where we have really got things done, and we don't stop until we get that change. And I'm glad you've been a witness to it. And I have other witnesses that know we don't stop. We get it, and we move on to the next thing because we got to get that going. But we need sustainable change.
Amen. Amen. And I can say, and I'm gonna just give little closing words here also, is that I know for sure that you're going to be fair to everyone and anyone that come to you for help. Because there's been things that I wasn't down with and you were down with. I was like, go and do your thing. And I ain't going over there with those folks, whatever it was. And so I know that you cross lines and wherever people need help, that's where you go. I've seen it with my own eyes. Also know what you mentioned about Black men, because I remember when there was a heavy attack on Black men on social media. We can't protect you and be your target too, and all these other different things. I'm like, I'm not targeting no one. Well, why y'all blanking and making a blanket statement about all Black men because a few may have done something? And you stepped up and said, I just want to give a word of encouragement to Black men, that we love you, want to encourage you. So in the midst of all that, I'm like, wow, okay, I know that, she's not against Black men and she's going to stand up for them, but I believe you stand up for everyone.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate being a Black man. I just want to, let that be known that I really do appreciate that. And you are the real deal. Because a lot of people make a lot of comments on here about, you being 100, and they really appreciate you and things like that. And so I appreciate you coming on. Slow Motion with Bishop Bowser. That's exactly what it is. It's about whatever's going on. We want to just come and look at that a little slower. Just slow down. Let's slow down and let's look at this a little bit slower. That's why I call it slow motion with Bishop Bowser, because we want to slow things down, because on the social media, everywhere, everything is moving fast and people want things fast. And so what I try to do with this podcast is like, let's slow down and let's go into some details here. Whatever time it takes, we're going to do it and get it out. And this will be posted up on my podcast, on Facebook, on our YouTube, on our website, and you'll be able to go back and listen to it in pieces if you want to do that, and so on. And I always put out clips of different things, so there'll be all kind of clips coming out. I don't know if someone might get you in hot water, because you know how I am. I'm going to give it to them raw and truthfully, right? But we thank you, Aeiramique, for coming on the show. Thank the Lord for all those of you. Yes, all of you, all of those that have come, that came on. made comments and watching and really participating in the show. I really appreciate that and love you, and ask that you to continue to do that. You know, we may not always agree on everything, but we don't have to be disagreeable. You know, even if you're going left and I'm going right on some issues, we can still love each other, respect each other. When we meet back up in the middle road where there's something that we can work together on or whatever it is, we should be able to do that without discrediting people, disrespecting people, putting people down because they're not walking in the same lane that you walk in or you think they should. We shouldn't bully people and force people to be something that they weren't born to be, you know, and with the education, you know, get your education, do what you need to do. But the bottom line is, no matter who you are, you're gonna have to learn to be an independent thinker, right? And that's what I appreciate about Meeka. She's an independent thinker and very smart, very bright young lady. And we need these young women in there, right? I mean, if AOC, I don't know, I think she's still in her 20s, right? And one of the youngest person won a seat to Congress, right? And she's a fireball up in there. And so, you know, we need that too. So I thank you and I really appreciate you taking the time to come on our show, and wish you well in your campaign. We'll be watching, looking, and we'll probably have you back on, possibly, you know, even if other folks want to come on the debate, we'll do that. I'll get with Sister Ellen Nass, who's good at that, and some others on here pretty good at that, and we'll set up a platform and have some debates. I don't know if any are coming up, but we most definitely want to see what everybody's talking about and how they look when they're lined up with each other. All right, so we thank everyone for coming on Slow Motion with Bishop Bowser. And this is the end of our podcast, and we'll be posting all of this very soon, and you'll see a lot. You'll see the post on my Facebook page. All right, God bless you, and we signing out.